Mick, how are you?
Not bad, Roy. Not bad at all.
Hey, have you seen a scrappier, hard-fought, error-ridden, congested half of footy? We called it last night, Mick, than the one between your mob and the Crows last night?
Yeah, I probably looked at it marginally different. I saw, as I walked out on the ground, a pretty slippery surface. They'd been at some concert on it the week before. The surface wasn't... it was just it was a bit. I don't want to say it wasn't good, because it was okay to play football on, but it was very slippery. And I thought you had two sides. Yep, there were mistakes made in round two of the first time that a lot of players played their first game. We had 6. I think the Crows had a couple, and it was hot. But players were really having a crack. I think when you got 2 games and you put your third one as a practice match, which is next week by both clubs, then there's a lot of players playing for few spaces. We had 26 players out there, as did the Crows, all playing 22 spots, which probably, when you look at Adelaide, they'd bring in, Betts and a couple of others, and we've got a couple of blokes that hopefully will be right by round one. So, there's not a lot of positions, and you're playing 26 players. So I wasn't surprised at how hard it was. The boys said after the game, there were a lot of bumps and bruises and scratches and good tackles. There was 130-odd tackles for a round 2 match. I think that's pretty extraordinary.
Michael, you told us post-game that you weren't too concerned about the result, and trying to remember the words exactly used about whether it was a tick for a win or a loss. But what were you looking for then last night?
Oh, we're looking for a win. There's no question. Look, I'm not going to state here that you go out there and say, "Oh, look, boys, don't worry about the result. Just go and play football." I just think that's a natural competitiveness. Says, listen, if you've got an opportunity, you've got to win games at football. And we thought at the time, I thought at the time, we needed to be basically about 4 up. I reckon at three-quarter time we weren't, and we had times for the 6 boys that were coming back. None of them had played since September last year. Some hadn't been on the oval until after January in their training. We knew that at some stage during the game, those players would need to be rotated pretty heavily, and given the restrictions and rotations, I think we're right on the money. I think we might have had 1 left over at best. So, make no excuses. Adelaide are a very good football side. They proved that a couple of years ago. They ran the side almost to the death of making the grand final. So we know how good they are. And when I look at some blokes playing for them, I think Paddy Dangerfield, I had the great pleasure of coaching him in the Australian side over in Ireland a couple of years ago. He's a champion. I don't use that word too frequently, but he's a champion. And I just think that they're a side that really work well for one another, and it was a great test for us, and we come up short in the last quarter.
Michael, Patrick Dangerfield's also a free agent next year. Do you envisage what you could do in that field with him?
Well, I have heard that 16 other clubs aren't going to go near him, and Adelaide have decided that they just don't think he's good enough, and guess what? He just falls to Carlton. Isn't it unbelievable? I think there might be some real... There'll be a few nerves around next year with him coming free agent.
There will be, and we'll get to Bryce Gibbs, and he's not the only one at the end of 2015. There's Tex Walker, there's Rory Sloane, and there's Patrick Dangerfield. I want to debate with you, or not debate, but discuss with you win versus management. You did say you wanted to win, and no question you did, and the players the last quarter did. But you had a say in it when you rested Gibbs, Yaron Waite and co. by design. So it was win versus management in the end, and you went for management.
Oh, you got to have management, yeah. But I'm also a very, very great believer in that if you replace a player, if you can't proceed forward without that player, then the team structure is letting you down. Because I know champions are champions, and I know very good players are very good players, and we were desperately keen to get some football into Scotland at the time because he was a sub. Paddy Cripps, we think, is going to be a pretty good player for us over a period of time here at the time. And so someone has to come off. And under those rules, you just got to bring some players off. And that's just the way it works out. So, look, players are rested. Players are slightly sore. You replace them. There's no 4 points. But at the end of the day, when you weigh it up, we're 8 goals each at three-quarter time. I thought, well, we're not 4 in front. And this is going to be touch and go, and we just didn't really, we didn't fire a shot really in the last quarter. But the most important, look, outside of good for the relationship with our supporters. The fact is that those 6 boys all got through the match around about the time we designated to them.
Yeah.
There was one that was a bit over, and there was one that was slightly short, but by and large, it was manageable.
Mick, we spoke to Zach Toohey last night on air for a good 20 minutes. What a champion fella. He endeared himself to our listeners, just a scream. He reckons Jeff Garlett's a little bit lonely because he was your favourite until Daisy Thomas rocked up. So just on the side, he's saying maybe you might need to go and put your arm around Jeff Garlett. But what a champion he is, Zach Toohey. These Irishmen that come over that have the weapons they have and just fit into our game, honestly, it's just a credit to him.
Oh, it's just terrific. I know the voice sometimes is a bit of a winner. It seduces you a little bit, the Irish accent, but he is he's a decent kid. He's his partner and he just had a baby. He's coping with that. I know he was looking to be naturalised. I'm assuming that did take place Australia Day. So if it didn't, it's certainly going to happen soon. There's a lot to love about him. He's a player that when I first arrived at the football club, I don't know whether he actually cemented his place in the side the previous year, but it's a real learning curve for the Irish. They know where the football is because they know how to find their own football. Yeah. They know how to use it, and he uses it beautifully. They're powerful. They actually get off the line far better than our players. I noticed in Ireland that their lateral movement is just extraordinary. It's a bit soccerish. I mean, the soccer players can move off the line so much better than our Australians because they've got those big, strong thighs and that hip movement. So they had so much, and they had new dimensions to our game. So, we've got young Kieran Sheehan, or actually Kieran's not much young. He's about 25, and we've got Kieran Byrne, who is 18, and Sheehan was the best player for the Irish in that Australian-Irish series. So he's over trying his luck with us, the bit of Irish luck, and he'll play in the reserves. Kieran Byrne will play as an 18-year-old coming to our system. He'll play in 3 weeks. So, we've explored that area comprehensively. I must admit it's one of my pet loves is to bring the Irish over because they don't take a lot of training up. They just love to get involved. They play football 12 months of the year, so they're easy. They hate missing it, put it that way.
Michael, Daisy Thomas last night, was that a sign of a player who's happy in his environment again or happy to have a coach he knows, or is he just sound in his body and confident with that? Or all three of the above?
I hope it's the former. But no, my one thing to Daisy, I say to him, be Daisy. You don't have to be anything else, son. Look, I love the way he goes about it, and the players, they're warming to... He's an extrovert. He's a restricted extrovert. He knows how far to go. He loves life, loves football, loves a competition, and really gets on well with mates. And I am led to believe that he may well have put a text out there for Swanee's birthday, and I think it might have been added with, I know Swanee barracks for the Blues or something along the lines like that. So, that's cheeky. That's him. And then if you know his humour, then because we're a pretty conservative organisation, our football club, our group of players are highly conservative, and I just don't think that this is going to be a great move for our football club. Not only the great abilities of him, but also his personality, and we've got a couple of others that are just under the surface. We probably need someone there to say, look, you come out of your shell, let's go for it. So it's a very good, right this very moment, it's a great victory for Carlton to get that player.
Michael, we're going to be honoured next week in Adelaide with launching the AFL season for the first time, and we'll have all the coaches in town. We'll have the big hitters of the AFL game. When that coaches session comes together, has Alistair Clarkson pretty well stolen the agenda now for what happens at that meeting?
Oh, I think you'll find there's a lot of coaches that are thinking very, very like-minded. I think when you're a premiership coach, you can actually say a few things after your premiership and get away with it. And I totally support Alistair. I think he does think about the game and he thinks about what he's going to say. And I think you might find that regardless whether it's been hijacked or whether it's the key indicator of our meeting, I think there might be some very, very interesting discussions take place in that meeting. In fact, it's one I'm sort of just sit back, one out, one back, and just listen. But I'm really looking forward to this one. So
what do you think will be the main items that the coaches are tossing about in their minds?
I think the main item may very well be what does it take to be a senior coach What restrictions are there, if any, at the moment? And do we need to impose some form of accreditation that, personally, I think that every coach that coaches, and I know this is different when I coach, but there should be some point system in there that says I've coached my own team. I know what it's like to win. I know what it's like to lose. I know what it's like to sack. I know what it's like to bring players into the competition, and I know how to be a dream maker and a dream breaker. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people don't like that responsibility. So therefore, to go straight into the main job, it's a massive undertaking. And I sincerely hope that there is some form outside of the 3-year accreditation thing, that there's some sort of licence that when you get to a certain point, you've got to have that licence to coach. And I take the American system and even the British system in many respects. There's a long list of coaching at college or coaching line coaches before you even get your opportunity. And the other thing they do very, very well, they don't accept just a sack coach as a sack coach. There's been plenty of coaches sacked, but they reappoint them. We've got a habit of getting rid of sack coaches, and they never appear on the horizon again. Sometimes it's the team, sometimes it's the chemistry, sometimes it's the board, and these people are just left out to never coach again, or never coach. And I think we're getting rid of so many good people and good coaches.
No, that's a good point. We've got one in Mark Williams, who's a premiership coach, and
Mark Williams, absolutely. Absolutely, Mark Williams. Absolutely, Mark Williams. And there's Terry Wallace. There's Dean Laidley. And I think one, that we tend to forget is Gary Ayres. He's been, he's been in that system now long enough to come back into the main system. He's a remarkable job down at Port Melbourne.
Michael Malthouse, our guest for North Point Trader. We'll move on. The match review panel, no overhaul, just an oil and lube, I called it. Just a couple of little tweaks. A little bit for you, because I know you've been pushing with us precedents for the match review panel. Well, they've sort of got that, but
sort of,
I'm not happy with it, Mick. Nothing.
No, I don't think there's a lot of people overly happy with the system. I think the system something had to take place against the old one. It did, and it needs. It's a bit like you go from the FX to the FJ or whatever, vice versa, and you just keep adding on to it. But at some stage you've got to go and let's have a look at those and think, well, we've got to start to move into the next level of what we want and what we want to see. Yeah, we've got to keep advancing with the time, and unfortunately sometimes we tend to just sit off a little bit and wait. I'll tell you one thing I am all for, though, is the football operations manager actually being a final voice to say, look, I think this has got to go further or less than. And I hope that is the case, that he's also able to perhaps study the case and say, look, I don't agree with it. I think you've got to have a very strong football person there. I think he's a good football person there. His strength will show up over a few years. I'm talking about Mark Evans. To me, he's got a final say. I know way back in the American system, it was such a brilliant idea. The late and great, I can't think of his name, I'll get it in a minute, but he was able to ring the club and say, listen, this bloke better pull his head in, because otherwise I'll whack him. And it just, players play to play. They don't play to run into umpires. They don't play to, the little whack in the guts and this sort of stuff. Well, you know what? That's happening and it'll keep happening. So let's get over a few of these things.
But Michael, how do we overcome, the last time we did that was with Ian Collins, and then we became concerned that too much power was invested in one man.
Yeah, but he's not the final voice in this. If he gets involved in every one of them, you might as well get rid of it. I just think that there's got to be a person there that brings back a bit of common sense. We're in a society today that's black and white. It's written down, so therefore that's it. But there's just that lack of common sense at times in a lot of things that we do in our homes. And that's the one where you need someone who's got enough nous to make those decisions. He'll get pulled up quick enough if he gets it wrong often enough, because there's a long list of people who are out of work at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree, Mick. Mark Evans, we had him on last night, General Manager of Footy Ops, and he can just refer things straight to the tribunal. And he brought up the Shawnee McKernan one. He got 2 weeks for an elbow and a little West Coast player, and it should have got 3 or 4. But I want him to go the other way as well.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
4 weeks. That's exactly right. Zeeble got 4 weeks. That was wrong. Every football person that loves the game knew that was wrong. I hope he then can say, well, hang on, I want that looked at the tribunal. That's worth 2, not 4.
No, you can't. Yeah, that's right. It's whacking them and loving them. They've got to be able to. If they can increase, they've got to be able to decrease.
Hey, Wayne Schross, just changing the subject. Former North champ, suffered from depression himself. He sits in the box next to us up here. He wants a mental health round for the AFL. Your thoughts?
Oh, well, I certainly, it's dangerous territory. It's something that he would be very familiar with, and he knows, and as we probably all are at some stage, we've all known probably all know someone who's had a depression of some description, and some have gone longer and more severe than others. So, around the football, I don't know. I think sometimes if these things are drawn to attention, they become a little bit more... Look, I'm going to sit on the fence. It's not something that jumps at me and says I'll totally put my whole weight behind it, but it's something that, if it happened, it happened. I certainly wouldn't disagree with it, but I'm still to be sold on it.
Too many theme rounds for me, Reach.
Well, yeah...
Trying to work out how would you make that one work if you represented on game day?
Yeah. And there lies a thing. If you start to highlight some things, there's certainly you'd need to be highlighted. If some things are highlighted, then probably not the right thing to be highlighted. As I said, I'm not sold on this one.
You sold on the university paper sent to Mark Evans about how to avoid the tanking in the sense of...
Love it. I spoke to the bloke who did that.
You don't see a flaw in it, Michael, where
No,
if all of a sudden we assume that the 10th loss immediately eliminates you from the final, we could get the tanking game in round 15 instead of round 22?
Yeah, but you don't know at round 15. You're still actually... What you don't want to do is... Once you've had the numbers to suggest that you can't make the 8, that doesn't stop you winning the next... if it happens at round 15, it doesn't stop you from winning the next 7. If you win the next 7, you still got first pick, which are the bottom side, technically out of the finals.
Yeah, but my concern, Michael, is in round 15 you might have 2 sides on 9 losses. They come up head-to-head knowing that there's a great incentive for losing that round 15 game.
Look, I think any system's flawed. Personally, I would give nothing to anyone. Because I think this is dog eat dog. I'm all for equalisation. There's too many things where certain clubs get too much opportunity to make a lot of money and clubs get nothing. But I think that if your club finishes bottom, you look at recruitment or you look at the coaching, and I'm sure boards look at this pretty closely. They now look at themselves, and you just got to do something about that. But to get the freebie, I am against the freebie. Absolutely against it.
We'll leave you with this
then
one.
Then you're eliminated.
Yeah, exactly. You commented on Bryce Gibbs. We've got mail that he's building a house and he's all but signed, Mick. So I think all the Crows and Port are going to be doing is buffing up his wage. What do you think? You're confident he's going to stay, aren't you?
This stage last year, compared to with Betts, I was sold that he was going to go because he just didn't. He couldn't give me an answer, nor anyone else an answer that he was keen on the football club. Bryce is making the right noises. That doesn't mean he's staying. All I know is that he's a far different approach than Betts.
So
and there's not knocking Betts. It's not knocking Betts. This is the system. But I have far greater confidence that Bryce will stay.
So clearly this time last year you eyeballed Eddie and you didn't get a good feel. You've obviously eyeballed Bryce and he's given you a good feel. So you asked him straight out. No. I think the game looks after itself there. You've got to be very careful about that. But no, I just in their demeanour, I just couldn't get. And that's my first year at Carlton last year. So I didn't. But the only approach I had with Ed before that was in the Australian side. So
But I looked at his personality then, and I looked at the way it changed, and I thought, oh, this kid's not making the right. The body language doesn't really impress me. I got a feeling that this is weighing him down. The thing was, it wasn't he wasn't trying. It was just weighing him down. I don't see that same weight on Bryce, and I know they're different individuals, but I don't see that thing now. Look, I might have read this wrong, but I'm pretty confident that it'll be a good outlook for Carlton.
Done. Thanks for your time again, Mick. Love talking to you.
All the best, mate.